Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harbers, your host, and with me today is Mr. Sports Blitz Pod, Brandon Noe. Hey, Brandon, how's it going today, man?
It's gotten a little better. You know, you got my heart rate up trying to fix our technology here, but we got it working.
Hey, yeah, I always hear if you plug and unplug, you know, maybe that's supposed to make it work better. I don't know.
We were doing all these things, and then I said, "I'm try unplugging it and see if that does anything." And sure enough, that fixed it.
That was it, man. You know, it's sometimes the simplest answer is the right answer. Maybe that's what the boys in MLB and the Players Association need to do is figure out some simple answers, man, because right now we're all standing here with our hands up in the air saying, come on, guys, we'd like to have a season.
I mean, if we can get a microphone working, I'm sure they can get a multi-billion-dollar industry working that quick.
Yeah. There's a few million and billionaire pockets that should be able to do that anyway. So what's going on with this? I mean, it's we're locked out. We're negotiating. I never understand why when you do a lockout, why do you stop negotiating? I mean, what edge does it give you over the players? Do you think that they're so struck with needing those first of the season dollars that, you know, well, I'm going to lock you out, and then time comes where we're going to be real close to deadline to getting everything started. You're going to feel compelled to jump in and agree to what I want to put in front of you.
When they locked it out, were they locking themselves out too? Because they went on like a 7-week vacation, and for those 7 weeks, it was like the John Travolta GIF where he's like confused and looking around. That's what it felt like. Yeah. You know how when Congress goes ahead and they got a holiday going, well, we would actually address that piece of legislation, but actually we need to go on holiday first. So, hey, maybe we'll get back to the serious issues of state after we have a vacation. It did feel like that, man. It's like, you know, I say I don't want to ever have really politics on the show, but this seems like a political arena when we're talking about what's going on with this CBA, this collective bargaining agreement between Major League Baseball and the Players Association. Yeah, unfortunately, everything does kind of resemble politics. And if one little mention of it will get people fired up on either side. But yeah, I mean, it's a good comparison in my opinion, because I mean, I don't pay much attention to politics, but everything I've seen, it sounds true. Oh, brother. Well, it's something I hope that we're all going to be able to get through. And there's a lot of back and forth, you know, about, well, the MLB would like the Players Association to get along. And one of the things we would like you to do is bring in a third party. We need an arbitrator. Maybe we'll bring the federal government in here to help us make a decision. You know, that didn't work out too well for MLB the last time. So trying to get free agency, that was something that was done. We look back with Justice Sotomayor back when she was a federal judge, and 94, 95, she said, boys, go back and play ball. You may have not figured this out yet, but you got to play ball. Maybe that's what they're looking for. Oh, yeah, they need like a parent or somebody to come in and say, hey, do this. But I mean, I would understand doing the mediator if they've been negotiating more than a couple of days like they have the past couple months. But it seems like they're not putting in the effort, or like I put out on Twitter yesterday, they don't have that sense of urgency that, you know, big money is on the line here. Yeah. Yeah. And the casual fan's not going to be paying much attention to this. They're going to one day go in there, turn on the TV and say, well, isn't it opening day? And they're not going to realize that the powers that be haven't really considered them enough to make sure the baseball was being played in a timely fashion. Yep. And as much as I said, baseball needs a shorter season, and I would love a shorter season, this isn't the way to be going about it, because it could kill the game almost. I agree with you. Ever since that 94, 95 strike, I think I've said this before, there's friends I know who have not watched a baseball game since then. They said, no, basically you turned your back on me and I'm turning my back on you now. And I'm not of that mindset, but I'm afraid with whatever audience that baseball has now, it may be thinned out if they don't resolve something soon. But hey, there's good news. They've met the past few days, so there's some progress. Not really important progress, but you know, It's better than what they have been doing.
Well, yeah, they had the 1 15-minute meeting and then I think it's a 5-hour meeting. But can you imagine the 15-minute meeting? What was that like? Said, okay, let's pass out the lunch menus, make sure everybody checks that. You've got options for seafood, vegetarian, or bologna. All right, you get that all filled out. Okay, good. We're still waiting for Herman to come in. Herman, are you in? Okay, good. Herman's here now. Now we can go ahead and proceed. Wait a minute. Oh, you need a bathroom break. Okay, good. Oh, it is time to start lunch. Well, wait a minute. It's time. We've been here for 15 minutes. We've put a good effort into this. Let's go home.
I didn't even get my soup and breadsticks yet.
Oh gosh, brother. I mean, that was such a joke anyway. It's what happened the other day. What's the most recent things you've heard?
Well, they met, I believe it was Monday. I'm confused on my days. They all seem to be running together at this point. I believe it was Monday. They met for they said they were in the same building for 5 hours, but it came out that they met for about 90 minutes instead. So I don't really know what they were doing the other 90 minutes, the other 3.5 hours. I mean, it is kind of warm in Florida, so maybe they were just wanted AC, but I mean, they are meeting. I believe the one yesterday was about 90 minutes as well. So at 90 is better than 15.
Yeah. You
Baby steps.
Maybe that's all the time they can spend together in the same room without throwing things one another. I don't know. That maybe they do need the adult to come into the room because this isn't boding well. Once this all gets resolved, there's going to be a lot of business that has to be taken care of quickly because we already know that spring training is not going to start on time. And if that's the case, I would imagine opening day won't either because we talked in the past about making sure that these players have enough time with spring training to loosen up and to get, in tune, because if there's a limited amount of that, there might be more injuries once the season actually begins.
And if baseball's smart, they wouldn't rush the spring training or the report to spring training because, I mean, there's outside things that a lot of these players got to figure out, especially the free agents, like where they're going to stay for spring training and how they're going to get there. And also, if you rush spring training, it'll be like the 60 game season a few years ago where you had a lot of like soft tissue injury or little injuries that just piled up into a bunch more injuries, especially with the pitching staffs, because they didn't have the ramp up time, which as much as you can complain about it, it is needed, especially in a shorter season.
Yeah, that's one thing that these owners need. They need $1 million player out there who's going to be injured and not be ready, willing, and able to play because of an injury. So I hope they don't forego a realistic amount of time for these players in getting a spring training. Once those contracts are signed, once everybody has an agreement, then there is the business of the game. And as you and I noted several times in the last few weeks, well, a lot of players who were getting, I shouldn't say last few months, a lot of players who got signed before that lockout deadline. But there was a lot of people who didn't get signed as well. And who's out there, man? I mean, we saw, was it the Rangers? Okay. They picked up Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. Tigers, they signed Javi Baez. And some of these were some of the largest contracts that have been out there in some time. But who hasn't signed yet?
I mean, we got big names out there that are still signed. I mean, Correa's still out there. Chris Bryant, Freddie Freeman, he's still out there. Who else do we have? We have Nick Castellanos, somebody who, I mean, I'd love to see in a Reyes or a Braves uniform, to be honest. Yeah. Clayton Kershaw, big name, still out there. A lot of guys. Kyle Schwarber, too.
Yeah, and think about Rizzo. I mean, Anthony Rizzo, who's done a lot. Look at him. Jorge Soler. I mean, he's a big DH guy. We could talk about that in a minute. Let's see who else we got here on this list. But like I said, Kershaw. One of the biggest ones, though, I think you mentioned earlier, that everybody, he may not be the biggest player of baseball, but he's certainly one of the most well-known and beloved, and that's Mr. Freddie Freeman. This guy, I thought, when you put up a poster of what an Atlanta Brave is, he should be basically that poster child. He should be the image of the franchise. And that might not be the case in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday that there's like growing thoughts that he could leave whenever free agency opens back up. And sorry, Braves fans, but I hope that doesn't happen because we were talking this morning and it was like he's kind of like how Chipper Jones was, where he was the Braves and it sort of transitioned to Freeman when Chipper retired. And now it's, his franchise, that's the type of player he is. And to lose that would suck, even though the Braves are loaded with talent. It'd definitely be a blow.
Yeah, it definitely would. And I can't imagine him in another uniform, but it looks like that might be a real possibility. Boy, I'd love to see. You're talking about being in a Reyes uniform. Can you imagine him? And not while this isn't a Raise Up edition, it is interesting to note that I've seen some rumors as far as like what the Rays may do. One of them may be actually trading Austin Meadows. They've already traded Joey Wendell, didn't they?
Oh yeah, everything so much has happened. We forgot about that.
Yeah, and think about this too. You and I actually predicted, what was it? We picked Willie Adames, and we picked Joey Wendell as two guys we thought the Rays would move. And I'm curious to see, while we're talking about all these free agents that will have to be signed within a very short period of time, how many trades may be going on too at that time? I don't know. I
have a feeling it could be like almost like NFL free agency and the NHL trade deadline all wrapped up into like a couple day period where there's a ton of signings and then a ton of trades all at once, which, I mean, that'd make for a heck of a show, but I don't know. I kind of thought that would happen the day before the lockout was supposed to happen, but that didn't really happen entirely, but one can dream.
Yeah, one can dream. And the dream was that we were going to have a season. That's the one I want right now. But no, and I forget who it was. Was it Sports Illustrated? One of them, they had picked who they thought were the top 50 free agents. And of that, I think 20 of them still had not signed when that deadline came on the lockout. So, but there are going to be a lot of hard decisions for the teams to make. Who are they going to sign? What are they willing to put up? And, when we talk about the Braves, what's the gentleman's name? Anthony Anthopoulos, the GM there.
Alex.
Alex, thank you. Alex Anthopoulos. What did I say? Anthony Anthopoulos.
I'll double check and make sure.
No, it's Alex Anthopoulos. It's Alex Anthopoulos. You're right. Sorry, Alex. But, here's a guy who was real aggressive, after the All-Star game. Alex Anthopoulos got real aggressive. He brought in some players who were going to help them get to where they needed, and they did. They made all the difference, got them all the way to the World Series, and then they won it. Maybe that's how he runs a business. Maybe he looks for a bargain sale, or at least he's willing to spend more toward the end of the season if they're getting closer to actually being in the World Series.
Hey, he went all in, and I don't know if the Braves kind of have like a soft cap imposed on themselves, what it is, or if they're close to it, or anything really about that like I do with the Rays. But I mean, I don't know how much that could be a factor into it as well, because you'd like to think a big name like Freddie Freeman, and as important as he is to your organization, I thought that's somebody you'd want to lock up almost right away.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine if he winds up being on a competing team against the Braves. Can you imagine when he comes home to play? It would be a kind of a mixed reaction. One, you'd be so happy to see him again. And two, there'll be some people who feel betrayed. They'll think, well, Freddie, you should have signed with us. But as a human being, he needs to be respected for his worth. And that's something that the Braves evidently may not be willing to do, at least not what he considers and his agent considers his importance and his value to the team.
I remember we had something like that happen. Oh man, that was almost a decade ago. Honestly, when Marty St. Louis requested a trade from the Lightning to the Rangers, and they wound up playing each other the next year in the playoffs. And for as long as he played in the Rangers uniforms, Lightning fans were not happy with him at all, even though he was the face of the organization. Him and LeCavalier were for so long. To be traded to honestly a team that was, it's kind of a rival, kind of wasn't, but it was just the whole backstory behind it. And if you want to hear about it, you look it up. It's quite the story.
Again, who were those players and which teams so people know what to look for?
Well, Marty St. Louis requested a trade to the Rangers from the Lightning. And that was the only team he wanted to be traded to, too.
Wow. Okay, boys and girls, make sure you check that out. That's Mr. Sports Split Spot at Twitter. And Brandon, no way. Brandon's always got the good insights on all those sort of things. Well, again, once these guys actually get the paperwork signed, and we hope they do, it seems like some of the news I'm hearing coming out of negotiations, there are little baby steps here and there, and I don't know if it's going to when it'll happen. But when and if it does, another consideration is this big gift that MLB is willing to give the players this time. And that's, guess what? We're going to allow you guys to have designated hitter, not just in the American League, but also with the National League. Hey.
Oh, that just tickles my fancy.
All right. Yay. Yay.
Hey. I don't know if that's something you need to collectively bargain, but
I know there's
okay.
I mean, those teams, some things they just need to figure out themselves internally. As long as I think MLB, why don't you negotiate with the other team? Say, hey, guess what? I'm going to blow you out of existence because we're going to do away with the competitive tax, and I'm going to go ahead and blow you Pirates out of the water. Ooh.
It's like the Office episode Scott's Tots, where he promised all these kids when they were in like 5th grade that if they graduate high school, he'll pay for all their colleges. And the only problem is he thought he'd be like a millionaire by the time that time came, but he was still the manager and he had no money. So he told them and he just got them laptop batteries instead.
Oh, gosh.
That's what Manfred's promise seemed to be when he was like, okay, we got a big deal here. We feel that this is really going to end the lockout right here. And then nothing happened.
Oh my gosh. I know most of you out there are going to know what a designated hitter is. The DH, primarily, it is somebody who can come in and substitute for the pitcher at bat. Basically, your pitcher doesn't actually have to ever see the plate. And what does that require? That requires an additional player, right? So that, yeah, it is some benefit perhaps to the players. But the thing of it is, one of the things I like about the DH too is that there are several players who may have already retired because they wouldn't be spending much field time, but man, at the bat, they can still crack it. You take, for instance, Nelson Cruz with the Reyes. Maybe there's two things you get from a guy like it. One, he's seasoned. I think he's about 41 years old now. He's a seasoned player, but he brings in some intelligence to the game to the younger players. And man, when he gets hold of that ball, it matters. He's going to be doing much better than any pitcher. But Nelson Cruz is now a free agent. He's one of a few. So that's one of the guys, Brandon, that the National League may be looking at closely, a lot of National League teams.
Yeah, if I were a team, and even if I AL or NL, there's a couple of guys I'd want as a DH. Schwarber, I'd take a look at. Freeman, I don't know how realistic he'd want to be a DH, but I'd definitely kick the tires on that. Let's see, maybe Rizzo as well.
Ooh.
Nick Castellanos, even though I think he could play in the outfield, I think that'd be a great option to kick the tires on as well. A lot of guys I'd want to sign as my DH, but I don't know how realistic it would be. But hey, I like to dream big.
I'm with you there. I look at let's see, what was the All-Star game? I think it was Franmil Reyes from Cleveland. That guy's a big man. He can make a difference in that. When you can look at the Angels, well, when Shohei Ohtani's up pitching, I guess you don't need a DH, but hey. But I was looking here too. Was it Miguel Cabrera with the Tigers? Yeah, he's getting up there a little long in the tooth with that Tiger, but he said he's going to retire in 2023. And see, this is a franchise player, okay? This is a man who's been with them so long. When we're talking about Freeman a little while ago, this is something when you have a team that you love, and you love to see that guy as it goes along, and that's what happened there. Yeah, and another guy, Albert Pujols. Okay, he didn't get a lot of love from his team last year, and they were willing to pay his ticket if they sold him to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers got him for a song. He said my time to retire hasn't arrived yet. Why do I have to retire? Because someone tells me to? I'm going to do it on my terms and when I feel I can't play anymore. So, Mr. Pujols, congrats to you on your attitude. And I hope the Dodgers pick you back up again this year.
Yeah, I'd like to see him get another shot at a title. And here's another name. I didn't know he was a free agent at the time or at the moment, but Tommy Pham. Would you consider bringing him as a DH? I mean, he's 33 and he had some off the field problems the past year or so, but I don't know how much that could affect his game, but would you take a shot on him?
Yeah, I would, man. I'd like to see Tommy that. Tommy brings an energy. You know, he is dedicated to the game. He's one of these guys. He's probably going to be out there early before everybody else and probably late as well. And I know the incident you're talking about when Tommy was in an altercation outside of a club and somebody took a knife to him. And I think they stabbed him in the back. I was wondering, I thought, oh my gosh, is this man going to be able to come back? But he did. And yeah, he brings an excitement. I'd love to see him as a DH somewhere. But when we're talking about injuries, you know, like that with Pham, sometimes you see those and you think they're going to be career ending. And what this last year, who was it? Kevin Pillar? And
yes,
he took that ball to the face. Man, he was, geez, you know, it sounded like the next day how bruised that face was. And he had to have like a mask because I think it kind of torn up a lot around his nasal cavity and all that. So he was almost like, I think, molding his face back into place. I don't think it's the doctor's way of looking at it, but he had sustained some serious facial injuries. Everything came back, you know, he was after time and he was able to get back the same year and play. And man, oh man, that says a lot about an individual. And hopefully it says a lot about the organization that's going to help that young man, you know, rehabilitation, whether it's an injury from somebody out there straining a muscle or something more serious like what happened, you know, with Mr. Pillar. And you hope that the team is going to be there through that kind of, well, rehabilitation.
And speaking of bad injuries, what about the pitcher for Durham last year? I believe it was Tyler Zombro.
Oh,
was that his name, who got hit by a comebacker?
Yeah. He not only he got hit straight in the face, and man, when he did, it was a 104-mile-per-hour line drive right up the middle. And when he went down, and you've seen the footage of this, and I don't recommend looking at this, anyone, because he went down, and then his body was twitching like in a seizure, you know, after he fell to the ground. Geez, it was crazy. I mean, he was rushed up there to Duke University Hospital. I guess it's close up there in Durham. And they said the doctors installed 16 plates and 32 screws into his head. Wow.
This sounds like a nightmare, doesn't it?
I cannot begin to physically imagine. And you think about this individual, Tyler Zombro, and his willingness, I mean, to come back to work. You know, he wants to be able to participate. So he's looking good, man. He's out there right now in the minors and looking forward to being able to play this year.
I'm kind of going where you were going, but isn't he, like, from what the article you sent me that Topkin wrote, it's kind of like he wants to give it a shot, but he's focusing on life after baseball anyways, just to see if he can still do it and give it the best shot he can.
Yeah, Brandon. And that's the thing a lot of these players have to consider. You know, it is a short period of time that they're going to be able to play the game. And after sustaining some injuries like that, is that something you really want to go back into? Because what he talked about going back to college and developing other skills as well. So I wish him well with that, but it goes back to the whole thing of what teams are willing to do to help a player back in rehabilitation. Now, when you think rehabilitation, normally you think, okay, they've had Tommy John surgery or they pulled a groin muscle and they're going back with their physical therapist, the team's physical therapist and doctor, and getting a program in place to get them better. One, to benefit that player and their health, and two, of course, to have somebody on that team who's going to be able to do it. And that was certainly the case with what they were doing in some of these cases with Pillar and Zombro. But you and I were talking about when all of this started coming down with the CBA, collective bargaining agreement between Major League Baseball, what was going to happen with a lockout with some of the players who are in the middle of physical therapy. And let's see, who is this? This is an article about Caleb Ferguson. He's a reliever for the Dodgers. In 2020, he appeared in 21 games, posted a 2.89 ERA. Now, due to right now what's going on, not being able to talk CBA, we've got the lockout. Teams can't be speaking with their players. So what happens? And looking at this is a story Caleb is talking about being a rehab guy, working with a PT all summer long through the team and doing all that, then not being able to talk to our medical team at all. The people that lead this whole thing being left in the dry on that, that's definitely part of this lockout that sucks. Wow. I can't imagine being in the middle of rehab, working with physical therapists, working with a doctor, and suddenly you're told you can't work with them at all.
I mean, I've said this before. These players are a team's investment. And you'd think you'd want to take care of that. And especially if they're at the AAA level or even playing games in the major league level, you'd want to do the best you can to protect and aid that investment. But it seems like just because of the lockout, they're basically, wiping their hands of it and saying, well, sorry, you're SOL. That's what it seems like. I mean, I don't know if that's really what they intend to do or if that's just like the legal rule of it, which if it is, that sucks. But I mean, that's the
feel
I
like
thought it would be.
I'm sorry, say the last part again.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just not the way I thought it would be, especially with all that money on the line.
Well, thank you. And you're putting one, that young man's health at stake, but two, if you're going to look at it just from a capitalistic point of view, this is a stock. This is all right. Say you're a farmer and you've got all of these flowers that you have a business with. If suddenly one day you quit watering them and then you're actually wanting to sell them later on, guess what? It's not going to have it. So you need to take care of those flowers, these athletes. You need to nurture them. You need to take care of them. So when you actually do want to do something with them, yeah. So see, going on here, Caleb Ferguson says, we have to use a middleman for everything. I can't pick up the phone and call our head trainer about what's going on or anything like that. It really sucks, but it is what it is. Oh, I hate that phrase. It is what it is.
And it seems like he's just trying to stay positive at least, but hopefully that the middleman's a good communicator, because how often do you communicate a message through somebody and then it ends up getting twisted? Most of the time accidentally, but how often does the complete message get through the way you want it to?
Rarely. How about that for an answer? I mean, I've been like at a doctor's appointment, and when I'm smart, I take a family member because what happens is when we walk out of that office and we've heard what the doctor said, and maybe one or both of us have written down a note or two. It's amazing how sometimes one person heard something more or less than the other. Or I said, how many times am I supposed to do that a day? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't hear that at all. Maybe that's what's going on with MLB. They're not hearing anything at all between the two. Anyway, I keep going back to that because it's easy to do and it's unfortunate. And I keep saying, we're not going to talk about the bargaining anymore. We're going to talk about the people. There are a lot of people who are affected. Caleb Ferguson, Tyler Zombro, a lot of these DH people, new ones coming in. There's players who still don't have a contract. What's that going to do to have a team up to speed if you don't have a contract in place and you're trying to build a team and you don't know if you're going to be getting somebody else? You're looking at the farm teams. We're expecting I think April 5th is like when the minor leagues start up. So what's happening with those players? They're not represented by the Players Association. So they're not locked out of doing anything moving toward the minor league season.
I mean, the bright spot for them is at least they can showcase their talents, and maybe because nobody can look at major league talent right now, they'll be watching a minor league game and they'll be like, hey, this guy's pretty good. He deserves a shot. We should trade for him or maybe bring him up.
Well, yes. And I mean, time and again, you and I both have talked about while we enjoy the major league games, as far as going to a game and participating with it, there's a richness to the minor leagues. There's a richness to college ball. There's a richness to other sports that are right in front of us sometimes that we just don't take advantage of. And the minor leagues definitely are something that I think that we can all enjoy. And as you were stating, can look and see perhaps some future prospect, some future talent that we may see rise up to make it to the show and make it to the major leagues. But that goes to a whole other point. The Athletic did a story recently, and it was talking about lockout limbo. I love this. It educated me a bit because, Brandon, what I thought as far as who could play in the minors would be anybody who was not on the 40-man roster for Major League Baseball. It's bigger than that. Or I should say, there's a whole gray area, evidently. On this article, let's see, Enos Harrison, Britt Giroli. I apologize, Brittany. But they were talking about Sam McWilliams. And they said, well, he's never actually been in the big leagues, but he did sign a big league contract. He signed that with the Mets. But he spent like the last year in AA and AAA. Okay. So, and, right now he's looking for a minor league deal. But guess what? There's some question whether or not he can do anything. His contract status from last season, he's still considered a player covered by Major League Baseball's lockout. So Sam McWilliams, guess what? You can't play for any team right now. Yeah, because you signed that Major League Baseball contract initially with the Mets. You haven't made it up to the show, but that's okay. We're still going to keep you in the status. Now, initially, you look at find this guy in a gray area. During a strike, unions usually help out their employees, or I should say their members. They put aside money into a potential strike fund, our work stoppage fund, and they help players out during those times. Now, because these minor league players who are in this kind of quandary of in-between land, they were not initially set up to receive any kind of benefits, whatever, from the union. That has since been corrected. But it kind of gives you the idea of these people being out in limbo. Now, what's happened? Pardon me. So what's happened? He can't play. And here's a little bit of a quote from McWilliams in the interview with the folks at the Athletic. He says, "It sounds funny now that I'm saying it out loud. I'm not repped by the PA, meaning the Players Association, and I'm not allowed to throw for teams. I don't really have any options right now." They go on in the article to say, "Confused? Yes. Welcome to one of the lesser discussed parts of baseball's lockout. Covered players who are working for minor league deals. For those players, the resounding feeling during the lockout between MLB and its players has been, what? Can you sign? Can you play? Can you even be scouted? And what even constitutes who is a covered player?" Well, in this limbo, I haven't been able to find enough information out of this. I've reached out to one of the journalists of this article. Haven't heard back yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of this, because basically, if the players are prohibited from any kind of interaction with the front office or with the union, they're literally in lockout limbo.
This whole thing is like, you can't be scouted. You can't even associate at all with anybody that is covered by the 40-man rule, or who isn't, whatever it is. But another thing that really surprised me is this is so sloppy that an assistant GM quoted in the article said that even they don't even completely understand the rules. So it's like, if a GM or assistant GM, you're supposed to know these things, but it's either they just don't understand it, or it's just so sloppily written that they don't understand it. And that's bad, because they're messing with people's livelihoods.
Yeah. And there's never enough consideration to what's going on in the minor leagues, with these CBA agreements. Because, well, you say maybe it's not supposed to be covered in it, but if you're impacting somebody's lives in there, yeah, it should. There's been a great hue and cry call, perhaps, for a minor league union. I'm not sure how they would do that if you went up and down, in and out of the show. But it's, as it is stands right now, from that article, they were also saying there are 1,497 players on the covered list, and roughly 1,200 of those are 40-man players on 30-team rosters. Okay, well, that's not too bad. But that still leaves 297 players in limbo land, man. If they're not on the 40-man roster, it's going to be a rough year if they can't get some of this figured out.
Yeah, and it's already bad enough as a minor leaguer like we covered last week. Now you're in limbo where you can't get paid or anything to do with baseball.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. So what's next, man? Support your guys. And I'm glad to hear that the Major League Baseball's Players Association is going to at least give some kind of recompense to them while Major League Baseball players are in a work stoppage. So we'll see. But we keep going back to, guess what, people? Yes, you don't have to worry about Major League Baseball because you have the minor leagues, you have college games, you have all these other things going on. So what's going on beyond those? Anything in particular pop up in front of you, Brandon?
Well, this weekend we had college baseball start up. They did a lot of those like invitational type tournaments. I know USF was hosting one where they actually only won one game and it came against your Louisville Cardinals. So congratulations to USF and shout out to them. Last year, they made it to the super regionals for the first time ever. So that was a good job from them. And they beat the Gators in the playoff in the regionals. So that's always nice.
Well, we all appreciate that.
But looking at the rankings, came into the weekend, Texas was ranked number 1. They stay number 1 at 3-0. Arkansas is number 2. Defending national champion Mississippi State started the season ranked 4, but they fell to 7 after starting the weekend 1-2. Plenty of teams still undefeated. We have LSU, NC State, Florida State, Arizona, all 3-0. Long Beach State came into the weekend ranked 24th, jumped all the way up to 12th. The Dirtbags, or the Fighting Evan Longorias. Let's see. Florida, they dropped to 15th from 9th after going 1-2. Georgia, 3-0, staying at the 16th ranking. Tennessee, Georgia Tech, 3-0 at 19 and 20, or no, 18 and 19, excuse me. We had Liberty and Maryland jumped up into the rankings up to 21 and 22, with Liberty going 2-1 and Maryland 3-0. Miami 4-0, moving up a spot to 24 from 25. And the only team that's dropped out of the top 25 so far this year is Dallas Baptist.
Ooh, tough, man. Moving all along with this and talking, you're giving us some good stats there. Is there anything in the game itself that if I went to see a college game today that I wouldn't have seen in a Major League Baseball game? I'm sure there's some things. What some of the things that are different?
Well, one thing that really popped up this weekend, and you're not going to see it at every stadium. You're going to see it at some stadiums because it's now legal. But Vanderbilt, the Commodores, in the one sport that they're good at, baseball, they're using, it's basically like an Apple Watch almost, but the pitching coach can type in a number to coordinate the pitch.
Okay. Is this shades of Alex Cora?
No, from what it seems like, they're doing it to try and, combat sign stealing, with what the Astros did and the Red Sox as well. That kind of scared people into it. I found a couple articles, one from CBSSports.com and another from BroBible.com. That's a name I thought I'd never have mentioned on here. And the first one comes from BroBible.com. Maybe that's where you work in your free time.
Bro Bible, yeah. Me and the dudes on How I Met Your Mother.
What they said is up until this year, excuse me, what they're doing would have been illegal. And even though the SEC allowed electronics for communication between players and coaches, one way, of course, it wasn't allowed nationwide. And so whenever they would do conference games, many SEC teams would use walkie-talkies so the coaches could talk to the catchers through an earpiece to do the signals. And kind of like how they do with quarterbacks at, college and the NFL level, where the coordinator or head coach can give them the play call and they can look at the wristband and there it'll tell them what the play is. So it's kind of like that.
Okay. So it's kind of the opposite of what Alex Cora was doing when you'd have down, when you were out there on offense and you got your guy on second and he's trying to read the catcher's, what his signals or the Are the managers trying to reach the signals? And then they're letting their batter know what's coming at them, as opposed to this being a defensive tool where you can communicate effectively with your pitcher on what maybe the next pitch should be that they're going to send.
Yeah, and some people aren't really big fans of it. I can touch on that here in a minute, but Max Hers was broadcasting the game, and he kind of explained it better than I probably did. And he said, quote, "This was the first year it's been legal for a college pitcher to wear something like that. Scott Brown, the Vanderbilt pitching coach, is punching numbers into a controller he has, and all 9 Vanderbilt players on the field have one. They all see the same thing, and that tells the pitcher what type of pitch to throw and where or how to throw it."
Wow. I wonder if that'll eliminate those little wristband thingies with guidance on what to do, and how would that even affect if suddenly you see a shift out there in the field because all your players out there playing defense are out there saying, "Oh, okay, coach sent this. If he's going to have Jeff throw a curve, and he says we should all move 10 feet to the right." Okay.
It seems like it's more for pitch and pitch location, but they say the goal of it is to improve pace of play and cut down on possible sign stealing.
Here.
And, some people are concerned about that. I believe it was Bro Bible had some tweets of people that said that, they're like, hey, it takes out part of the legal sign stealing aspect of the game, which, hey, I understand. Everybody does that. And then some people were like, oh, it takes away the importance of the catcher, or it's just automating the game even more. When it's at the college level, the catchers rarely call the games. It's more the pitching coaches that call the games.
Right.
But at the MLB level, it's a little bit more the other way, where the catchers will call the games. But I think it's kind of the future anyways, because how much with analytics are catchers in the future going to be calling games themselves versus what the analytics will say?
Yeah, and part of me doesn't like that. I don't consider myself a traditionalist, but I love it when I see a good rapport between a catcher and pitcher, and they have a sense of what's going on the plate. I don't think anybody's going to have a better sense of what's going on the plate than that catcher. And if they got a good relationship with the pitcher, and I keep going back to the two guys who we had here with the Reyes, some time ago. And we're talking about Charlie Morton and who is it? Come on, Brandon, help me out.
Was it Zunino?
No.
Perez?
No, the guy who went to the Braves with him.
Oh, Darno.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think when I think of those kind of comparisons, I always think about the two guys, Charlie Morton and Darno, and those two guys had such a rapport. Both of them were on the Braves team that won last year. Charlie's he's an amazing guy, but you don't get to be that way unless you have a good rapport with the catcher. He's giving you a signal about what to throw. Not that the pitcher obviously is going to deviate sometimes from whatever the catcher's recommending, but I just don't like the idea of that going away and that it goes back to the dugout with the coach or manager.
Yeah, this is something that I'm going to have to kind of have a wait and see attitude with. I know that's probably not what people want to hear, considering, we're supposed to have opinions on it, but I see what you're saying. But I'm also like, is that art form kind of on the way out? Sort of like how, nobody knows how to bunt anymore.
Yeah.
Is that going to just disappear over time? Because like I said earlier with, analytics, is that going to be how, coaches call games now? Because they do call it a little bit in the majors anyways, but it's still in the minority.
Yeah. And it's most likely going to change. And, anything that's better for the game, I'm certainly for. So we'll see, and there's a lot of things that have gone in the minor leagues as far as trying out. And certainly with collegiate, with this, it'll be interesting to see if that advances and they try that out in the minor leagues or some special leagues later on. Very interesting, nonetheless. Very interesting way of communicating. Get your little Apple Watch out there and you know what's happening. Can you imagine if you hacked in that?
That'd be a pretty big hint, but you got to figure out what those numbers mean too.
There you go. Oh my. Oh, there's always going to be somebody out there who's going to try to do that. So we'll see.
Yeah. I have some guesses who it could be.
Jeez. Go ahead. And verbalize. No.
Is it that team down in Houston?
Oh,
the heart of Texas.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Crane's company. Man, we'll see. But I'll go back again, everybody. Check out your local listings there for minor league ball. Make sure that you're checking out what's going on with your colleges as well. And this past week, we were very fortunate to have Mary Kitts join us for a special edition of Baseball Biz. And it was about softball. Specifically, we were talking about FSU, but all the top 25 in the Division I teams. It's a very, very exciting show, very informative. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, you should. Now, here's a few things, Brandon, that I didn't know when I first started watching softball a couple years ago. I said, why are they ending this game early? There's only 7. They've only played 7 innings. You know, it's like, what happened here? Mark, that's how many innings there are in a college softball game. Oh, okay. I got it now. Got it. But watching the Seminoles this past week, there was actually a tournament in St. Pete, Clearwater area. And they have this each year. They invite all these teams come in, and it was a pretty good group of teams. They've had people like, I think, Oklahoma, Texas, UCLA, FSU, some others. And FSU came in and they did pretty daggone good. They kind of cleaned up. And while I was talking about a 7-inning game earlier, Brandon, they played UCF. I was glad to see UCF is in the top 25. They were. The key word is were. They were in the top 25. There was like, of the top 25, I think it was like 4, at least there was 3, maybe 4 teams from Florida. Well, FSU went up against UCF. I was watching this on ESPN Plus, but FSU went up against UCF, and after 5 innings, the score was 8-0. And I guess they have a mercy rule because bang, end of game. Suddenly I was watching ESPN Plus and the screen went dark. Thank you for watching. What? There wasn't any post-game analysis or anything. It's just, what do you mean? 5 innings, 8-0. Oh, 8-run lead mercy rule. Jeez, Pete. I don't know. It's probably a good thing to do. But
shout out to USF again. They're in the top 25 now.
Wow. Yeah. So again, they're there. Florida's there. FSU's there. And FSU finished out that tournament, heading up against UCLA, who's done a bang up job. They wound up winning against them, beating them, but they actually had to go into an extra inning, 8 innings anyway, to win the whole thing. So, kudos to them. And if you're looking at the rankings here for them, let's take a quick look. Oklahoma's leading that out with 10-0. So they've all played around 10 games thus far. Alabama's 9-0 record. Florida State, number 3, 10-0. And they moved up since last week. I think last week they were number 6 or number 4 this week. Florida, last week it was number 4, and they're still number 4. Let's see. You got Washington. I'll just kind of go quick. UCLA is now number 6, was number 3 last week. And they're number 6 probably because of that game against FSU. Let's see what else. I can read them all down here. My old Kentucky home, they're number 14 with a 9-1 record. This is the part that's interesting to me, and I'm sure just who they're playing. So Kentucky's there with a 9-1 record, and Clemson's number 9 with a 6-3 record. It's like, does that make sense? Not really.
So Kentucky was ranked lower originally than Clemson was.
Yeah, because they went from 19 to 14. And Michigan's in there. Michigan's team I always expect to be doing well. And I know that's one of the ones Mary Kitts was talking about as well when she was on the show. Let's see, who else? Oh, and number 25, South Florida.
I don't know much about softball, but maybe during this lockout, I'll learn a little bit more. The only thing I really know is USF's decent, as their coach goes to the Olympics a lot, and Oklahoma dominates usually in the postseason. That's all I really know. Yeah, and FSU's coach, Lonnie Alameda, I believe, she did a fantastic job. I think she's went to Olympics with the Canadian team for softball. So, you got some good players here. And one of the things I was talking about with Mary, these players are fierce. They play with such intensity. And part of me wonders if because, while there is a pro league, this is probably going to be it for a lot of these players. This is probably going to be the pinnacle of their career.
And there's probably going to be more attraction to a collegiate game than there would be a professional game right now in softball. And that may be wrong perspective, but that's what I see as far as the commitment to the game. You know, some other things when I was talking with Mary that were kind of interesting is it looks like that softball is actually bringing in more money, broadcast money, than collegiate baseball.
Oh, that's surprising. I wouldn't have thought that. I usually see more baseball games than softball.
Yeah. Another thing she pointed out was that when the team arrives to the stadium, they're already in uniform because there's no lockers for them. You get off the bus in uniform and you leave that way too. And I said, my gosh, I wouldn't want to be next to anybody, another athlete that had been out there in the hot sun baking for a few hours and getting back onto a small crowded little bus to leave with.
I know at USF, they both baseball and softball, because their stadiums are like right together. You can flip flop between each stadium and watch games, but they don't have locker rooms at all. They dress it like the Selman Center. I think that's what it's called. It's across the street from the stadium. So they have to walk across before and after every game in uniform. So neat stadiums, just no locker rooms. Yeah. Well, and one of the things she was telling me too is that some of these places, even with some of the better stadiums, they don't have facilities. They put a porta potty right next to the dugout. And it's like, yeah, in the middle of the game, pardon me. Geez, Pete. Oh gosh. Yeah, but I guess in college, unless you're football or basketball, you're really not getting any money because you're not the big money sports. No, you're not. And to me, this sounds like some of the arrangements I had in the old fraternity house with Lambda Chi. So does the plumbing work here? Not today. Okay. But the cold beer, no, we got some warm beer. So you get that. All right. Oh, okay. I devolved into a terrible past that I shouldn't be looking back at. Frat boy Mark. Oh gosh. And it was longer than it should be. Eternity. Good people, plenty of good people, but I had no business being there. All right. Quit talking about me, but I do want to say that I am looking forward to the minor league season. I'm looking forward to seeing these guys get out there. And I'm hoping and praying that these 297 players that are in limbo are able to do something here within the next few weeks. Yeah, hopefully they can come to a resolution. I don't know when it can be. I don't really have faith in them that it can be sometime soon, but I'd like to be proven wrong. Well, I hope in this case you are. And Brandon at Sports Blitz Pod, what are you seeing outside? What are you doing? Are you watching any other sports? Perhaps cricket? I don't know. What are you digging into? Well, since football's over, I'm getting back into racing a little bit. Of course, the 500 was this weekend. Great race, by the way. March Madness coming up. I know nothing about basketball, but it's always fun to fill out a bracket. So that's fun. And of course, we have NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs coming up here. And just a little over a month and a half, maybe, till those starts. And those are always fun to watch. And you can definitely follow me on Sports Blitz Pod to get all the latest. That's Brandon at Sports Blitz Pod on Twitter. And thank you, Brandon. Looking forward to seeing more on that because, like I said, a lot of us are looking for something new. Well, we want to thank you guys for joining us here today at Baseball Biz. Brandon, why don't you go ahead and take us out of the park? All right. So everybody, thank you for listening. As always, remember, like, rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Tell your friends, tell your neighbor, tell everybody about us, and follow us on Twitter, wherever you can find us, and feel free to shoot us a message. Absolutely. And you can find us also on Spotify, Google.Podcast, iHeartRadio. Oh, geez. Where else? Stitcher and a lot of other ones out there. Again, it's Baseball Biz. When you do a search for a podcast, that's all one word. But again, thank you all again for joining us once again to talk about the world of baseball and hopefully a future that's going to be unfolding very happily for a lot of fans. And fingers crossed, toes crossed, and we'll see what comes. Special thanks to X-Take RUX for the music rocking forward.